Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in and get started because I have a ton of information that I want to share with you today. So I will waste no time and start by introducing myself. So my name is Lauren. I'm a current second-year dental student at Harvard. And just a couple of years ago, I was in your shoes. So around 2 years ago, I was studying for the DAT. When I first started studying for this test, I was completely confused and overwhelmed by it. I had no idea how I was going to prepare for this test. I had no idea how I was just going to learn everything before test day. Fast forward a few months after that, I ended up scoring a 27 academic average on the DAT. And fast forward a few months after that, I ended up being accepted to 12 of the dental schools that I applied to. So I know what you're feeling right now if you're feeling overwhelmed by this test, and I promise you that this is something manageable that you are going to do well on and get through. So super excited to have everyone here today for two reasons. First of all, in today's webinar, I will be sharing all of my best advice with you for studying for and preparing for the DAT. I'm basically going to be walking you through from start to finish how I studied for this test and give you all the tips and tricks and advice that I used along the way. And I'm hoping this advice is helpful to you no matter where you are in your study process. So even if the DAT is not something that you're taking for another year or two, hopefully this advice is helpful for you for when you do start studying for the test. Same thing goes if you're taking the test in just a couple of weeks, say, and it's coming up and it's right around the corner. I also have advice that is going to help you boost your score and really help you get the scores that you want on this test. Second reason I'm very excited to have everyone here today is that at the end of this webinar, I'll be sharing a discount code with everybody who's here today, and this is going to help you save money on your DAT resources. And I know as a student myself how expensive this process can be. From taking the test to applying to dental schools, it really is an expensive process. So I'm hoping this is going to save you some money on getting the resources that you need to be successful on the DAT. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. So first, I'll start by giving you an overview of the DAT for those of you who may be somewhat unfamiliar with this test. So the DAT is a standardized test that is required for admission at all dental schools. And it is a long test. It is several hours long, and it includes a bunch of different subjects. So the first section of the DAT is known as the Survey of Natural Sciences. And this section includes biology, general chemistry, and everybody's favorite organic chemistry. The second section of the DAT is known as the Perceptual Ability Test, or the PAT. So this section of the test, honestly, when I was studying for it, confused me so much. It was just unlike anything I had ever seen before, and I didn't totally understand why it was on the DAT or what it was testing. But I can tell you now, as a current dental student, that the PAT actually does come in kind of handy because as dentists, we need to be able to visualize things in our minds. We have to have a really good attention to detail and to small differences. So honestly, the PAT was kind of helpful at the end of the day. So the PAT includes 6 different question types that sort of test your visual and spatial reasoning skills. Third section of the DAT is reading comprehension, pretty standard, reading passages and answering questions about it. And then the last portion of the DAT is quantitative reasoning or math. So it includes some algebra, probability, things like that. Nothing crazy, no calculus, so don't worry about that. So those are the subjects covered on the DAT. And how it goes is that you register for the test. You can take it pretty much any day of the year. It's taken at a test center and it is fully online. Then after you submit your test, you get your scores basically right away. So this is kind of scary because you basically hit submit and then your scores pop up on screen. But honestly, I think that's better because that way you're not waiting around for test results anxiously. You get them on the same day you take the test and then you're pretty much done. So that's an overview of the DAT. So I'm going to shift gears now and start sharing with you my advice. And along the way, I'll also be sharing my screen periodically because I want to sort of give you a visual of some parts of the Crack the DAT website that I used when studying and that were just really helpful for me. So first things first, this is so important and a lot of people skip this step. You want to create a study plan for yourself or use a pre-made study plan. Why this is so important is that it just helps you plan and it helps this test feel so much more manageable. Imagine just diving right in with no plan, which is what I did initially. After a few weeks of this, you start to feel overwhelmed. You're not really sure when you're going to finish getting through all the material. It just starts to become a lot. So I think before you do anything, create a study plan for yourself. And you just want to see what you want to do each day. So first thing you want to do is figure out when you're taking the DAT. Say your test is in 3 months. So now you know you have 3 months to fill with studying for the DAT. Next, you want to decide what you're doing each day. So for example, you can say, I'm taking this practice test, I'm going to use this PAT generator, I'm going to review this practice test from yesterday, and I'm going to review this biology topic, so on and so forth. So sort of plan out what you're doing each day leading up to test day. So that's the first option, is creating your own plan. Second option would be using a pre-made plan. So let me share with you my screen. So here is the Crack the DAT website. As you can see, this platform pretty much includes everything that you would need to study for the DAT. I'll be highlighting some different parts of it later, but let's start by looking at the study guides and schedules. So let's say your DAT is 8 weeks from now. So we can open up this 8-week study schedule. And as you can see, this study schedule walks you through every single day of those 8 weeks, what you will be doing to study for the DAT. So it tells you what tests you're taking, what videos you're watching, what generators you're using, etc. So pretty comprehensive. If you don't want to make your own study plan, this is a great option and this saves you time. So that's my first piece of advice, is go in with a plan. This test is going to feel 100 times more manageable already. So after you've done that, the next thing that you want to do is take a diagnostic test. So let me first show you the diagnostic tests on Crack the DAT. So as you can see, there is a diagnostic for all of those 4 sections that I described to you. So natural sciences, PAT, reading comprehension, quantitative reasoning. Let's just click one just so we can get a visual of what it looks like. But here you go. Here's some sample PAT questions that look just like the questions you would see on the actual DAT. So all of these Crack the DAT diagnostics are around 10 to 15 questions long, so they're super short. It's really just a way for you to get a quick sense of how you're doing at the beginning of your studying. Let me stop my screen sharing for a moment. So yeah, the diagnostic test is just a way for you to gauge your initial starting point. So I think this is helpful because it helps you see what subjects you should spend a little bit more time on and what subjects may become more naturally and you can spend less time on. I will say though, don't get too caught up on your predicted diagnostic test scores. A little story, when I first started studying for the PAT, I took a PAT diagnostic test. Like I said, I was just so confused by those questions. I really did not know how to approach them whatsoever. And I was told that my predicted PAT score would be 12 out of a possible 30 points. So I was just so discouraged by that. On the actual DAT, I scored a 23 on the perceptual ability test. So don't worry too much about those predicted scores. Don't worry how many you got wrong. Just use your diagnostic test to sort of guide you, and also just to familiarize yourself with the types of questions you're going to see on the DAT. So you made your study plan, you took a diagnostic test. Next thing I would recommend, this is the last goal setting type of thing that you want to do, is kind of figuring out your target scores. So this differs from person to person. One thing that I would recommend doing is looking up some of the dental schools that you might apply to in the future and seeing what the average DAT score is of their accepted students. So of course, keep in mind, this is an average. That means that around half the students who were accepted to that school scored higher than the average, and around half the students who were accepted scored lower than the average. So it doesn't mean you need to get exactly that score, but it is just a good way to sort of guide your goal setting. You can also be more broad with your goal setting. So for example, you can say, I just want to score above a 20 in each section. Or if you're already into your study process, you might say, I just want to boost my existing predicted scores by 1 or 2 more points. Set some goals though. I think this is really helpful just to know what you're aiming for. And then as you're studying for the DAT, you can sort of keep track of your practice test scores in a spreadsheet and see how your scores are improving over time. So that's my next piece of advice for you. Now we're going to transition into talking about the learning and reviewing phase, as I call it. So for this, I will be sharing my screen with you once more so that you can get a sense of what I'm talking about. But for me, the learning and reviewing phase was the phase where I was watching videos, I was taking notes, I was really learning the content that was on the DAT. So a lot of the content that's on this test, you definitely will have seen before. If you're a college student now, you're taking your dental school prerequisites, you honestly will have seen most of this content before. But of course, maybe you saw it 2, 3, 4 years ago. For example, for me, I had to study a lot of biology because I took biology my freshman year of college. And by the time I was studying for the DAT, I was a junior. So all that information was out the window. So I had to spend a lot more time reviewing biology. But this is the phase where you're getting the content fresh in your mind and you're learning it. You're not as focused on actually taking tests and assessing yourself as you are learning. So during this phase, there is a few different resources you can use. First of all, if you're more of a visual learner, highly recommend watching video crash courses. As you can see, Crack the DAT has video crash courses for every single subject on this test, including reading and math, which is really special. But let's just see as an example. If we were in the learning phase for biology, whatever topic we were learning that day, we would have a video for it. Second option you have, if you're more of a notes and reading type of learner, is using cheat sheets. So again, pretty much for every single topic on the DAT, there is a cheat sheet available to you. So let's just click one just to get a sense of what they look like. So let's do digestive system. This is a biology topic. So you can see it's all laid out here for you. All the key information that you would need to know for the DAT is all here on one sheet. So when you're reading these cheat sheets, I recommend reading them actively. So that means highlighting, taking notes in the margins. Don't just read them passively because a lot of the information won't stick if you're just reading passively, not really paying attention. But if you're highlighting, you're really engaging with the material, it will stick. So those are two main options. For me, what I did was combine them. So I would first start by watching a video about the topic, and then I would move on to the cheat sheets and then read about the topic. That way I got the information presented in a couple of different ways, and that really helped the information stick. But again, totally up to you and up to what type of learner you are. Also, you don't need to do this for every single topic on the DAT. I would focus more on the topics that are trickier to you. So like I said, I did a lot more review of biology. I did more review with organic chemistry. I didn't have too much of a learning phase for reading comprehension, just as an example. So that's the learning phase. Next, once you've done your learning phase, you're going to shift into starting to take practice tests. This is probably the most important part of the study process, in my opinion, because practice tests are what's going to help you simulate the actual DAT and get the real experience of what taking the test is like. So let's look at our practice test here. Let's look at a natural science test, for example. So let's say we're doing natural science test number 1. First of all, really cool feature, if you want to change the duration of your practice test, you can. So for example, maybe you're starting out, especially with PAT, and you're just not able to get through all the questions in the time limit, you can give yourself more time. So if you can't do it within the 90 minutes, for example, for this, you can give yourself 10 more minutes right from the beginning. And then as you learn and you study, your speed and your accuracy will both improve. So I wouldn't worry too much about timing to begin with. But let's say, okay, we're leaving the 90 minutes and now we're taking the practice test. So this practice test looks exactly like the real DAT, down to this blue coloring and everything. Same thing, you can also cross out answer choices just like you can on the actual DAT. So it's really nice just having the actual look and feel of the DAT on your practice test. So during the practice test phase, I recommend doing at least a practice test a day. What I did was I would learn a topic. So I would watch the videos, I would read the notes, and then a day or two later, I would take a practice test about that topic. This is really helpful for the biology section because there are also biology mini tests available. So if you learn a biology subject, you can just test yourself on that subject a day or two later and make sure that you actually learn. So here's what I'm talking about. Here are the biology mini tests. So for example, I would watch videos about biochemistry, read the notes about biochemistry, and then I would take the mini test about biochemistry. And that altogether really helped me learn that topic. And I felt confident about those types of questions when they would pop up again. So spend a lot of time taking practice tests. And then my next piece of advice, and this is also almost just as important as actually taking the test, is reviewing your mistakes. This is seriously so important. I can't stress this enough. I'll stop sharing my screen again for a moment. I highly recommend reviewing your mistakes after you take a practice test. So it does not need to be right away. Every time I took a practice test, I would definitely need to step away from my laptop for at least an hour or two and just give myself some space and some time to relax. But always come back to your practice tests after you've taken them and review your mistakes. You'll have full explanations for each question that you missed. Also, be sure to review the questions that you guessed on because sometimes you just don't really know how to solve a question, but you got lucky. Review the explanation, make sure it makes sense to you, because that's really how you're going to avoid making the same mistakes in the future. So that's my best advice for the science, reading, and math sections. For PAT, though, there are some extra resources and tips and tricks that I have for you. So let's take a look at some PAT unique advice. So let's go to the perceptual ability section. So as you can see, there are PAT tests that include all 6 question types, or you can just take a test that includes only one question type. So say you've just practiced keyholes, which is one of the 6 question types, you can take a test that's just keyhole, which is awesome. Same with hole punting, cube counting, all of the different subjects, pattern folding, etc. But something that I definitely want to talk about is PAT generators, because this was the most useful thing, hands down, for me for studying for PAT. I think PAT generators are what got me from that 12 predicted score all the way up to a 23. So let's take a look at a PAT generator here. You can do practice mode or competition mode, kind of makes it a little bit more fun. I will do practice mode today. So as you can see, these generators are going to give us pretty much an unlimited number of PAT questions. You can hit new question 100 different times, and a new question will keep popping up for you. So this is just super helpful. You'll get instant feedback as well. So if you pick an answer, you'll know right away if it was right or if it was wrong. So I love the PAT generators. I did them pretty much every single day while I was studying, even if just for 10 or 15 minutes. I think this was the best way to get exposure to a ton of different PAT questions. You get instant feedback. You have pretty much an unlimited number of questions. You can also do this pretty much anywhere. So if you download the Crack the DAT app and you have it on your phone, you can do a generator when you're waiting for the bus to come, when you're waiting for a dentist appointment, or whatever it is. Whenever you have a few minutes to spare, you can work on your PAT generators, and it seriously makes such a difference. This is also a great place to test out your strategies. So with PAT, there are a lot of different strategies that you can use to approach these questions. We write about them on our pre-dental blog, which is dentaladmissiontest.medium.com if you want to check it out later. But these strategies are a really helpful way for approaching these types of questions, and I tested all of my strategies out using the PAT generators. So let's just take a look at one more of these because I think they're so helpful. So pattern folding, another question type. Again, pretty much unlimited questions here, as you can see. Also, these animations are awesome because they help you visualize how these objects fold up to form their 3D shapes. So that's also a really cool feature. One more PAT specific tip that I have is to play the PAT trainer game. So I'll just show you what that is. So this game sort of has you work through a bunch of different questions. So these aren't PAT questions per se, but they are questions that test your perceptual and visual ability. So for example, the first task here is making a perfect parallelogram. I think my skills are probably pretty rusty. No, okay, that worked out. So that's one of the questions. Another one is finding the midpoint of the line segment, as you can see. Okay, pretty good. But yeah, there are a bunch of different components to this game, and I also tried to incorporate this game about once a day in my studying because it really just helped sharpen my perceptual skills. And it was kind of a fun and different way to do that instead of only doing generators or only doing practice tests. So that's my best advice for PAT. I'm going to start wrapping up soon. Remember to hang out to the end so I can share the discount code with you. But I'm going to talk last about full-length practice tests. So again, we're going to the test section here, DAT Exam Test Simulator. That's where you're going to find 10 full-length DAT practice tests. So these are tests that are going to include science, PAT, reading, and math, all back to back, just how they would be on the actual dental admission test. So I recommend starting to incorporate these full-length tests towards the end of your studying. So definitely not at the beginning when you're learning. and then not in the middle when you're just taking the subject practice test. You want to do these towards the end when your test is maybe a few weeks away. You need to decide how many you want to do total. I ended up taking around 2 or 3 full-length practice tests. These are long. So as I mentioned earlier, the DAT is a multi-hour long test. So these full-length practice tests are going to be exactly the same to simulate the real experience. So you'll need a day when you have several hours to sit down and take the test, and you really want to take the test in as realistic conditions as possible. So put your phone away, try to take the test in a quiet environment, try to take it all in one sitting, that you can give yourself a break in the middle because there is a break in the real DAT. But you want to do your best to make the experience as realistic as possible. So you need to set aside time to do that. And then later, you'll also need to set aside time to review your mistakes, as we talked about earlier. So all in all, these tests can be a little bit of a burden. They are long, but they are so helpful in preparing for the DAT and really, really feeling prepared for test day. When I took my actual DAT, I felt 50 times more prepared because I knew that I had already taken full-length practice tests before. And these practice tests really made me feel like this was just something I had done before. Honestly, the questions on the practice test were a little bit harder than my real DAT questions. So I actually felt extra confident on test day because it just wasn't harder than anything I had studied before. So take practice tests at the end, 2 or 3, or however many works for you. At least 1 is what I recommend. And that's kind of just going to round out your studying and finish everything up. So let me stop sharing the screen for a moment, just give you some closing thoughts and advice, and then I'll be sharing the discount code with everyone. And thank you so much again, seriously, for being here today. I'm really excited that I got to share this advice with you. So last, I want to talk about what to do right before a test day. So I recommend not studying the day before your test. By this point, trust in yourself, trust that you have done all that you can do to prepare for this test, and you really will be prepared. If you made a plan, you learned, you took practice tests, you took at least 1 full-length test, you reviewed your mistakes, you are going to be so prepared on test day, seriously. It won't feel any more difficult than anything you've already done up to this point. So if you can, give yourself the chance to just relax on test day, distract yourself, just get your mind off the test. Then on test day itself, I recommend having a nice breakfast. I was honestly so nervous that I couldn't even eat as much as I wanted to, but do give yourself the energy that you need to take this test. And then go in with as positive as an attitude as you can. I really think that just having confidence in yourself and telling yourself that you're going to do well on test day is going to go such a long way. So that is all of my advice for doing amazingly on the DAT. I hope this is helpful to you. This is all the advice that helped me score a 27 on the DAT and get accepted to all the dental schools that I was hoping to get into. So I'm going to now be sharing the discount code to everybody who's here today. So the discount code is going to get you 15% off any DAT test prep package on crackdat.com. So the discount code is webinar, WEBINAR, webinar. So you'll pick your Crack the DAT test prep package, whichever one works for you. It's just depending on how many months you need to study for the DAT. Then at checkout, enter the discount code webinar, and that's going to get you 15% off as a thank you for being here today and listening to all my advice. So thank you guys again so much for listening. I really appreciated having you here. Again, I hope this was helpful, and I seriously wish you all the best on your DAT. I seriously believe that anyone can do well on this test with the right resources and the right mindset. So really believe in yourself because it is going to make all the difference. All right. Thank you guys again. Have a good night.